Alright, welcome back. So in this video, we're now going to talk about another phenomenon within the subconscious that I call subject morphism. So it's just a term I made up, and it's actually similar, in a certain way, it's similar to the concept of subject closeness, right? So we talked about that in chapter 10. That basically is just the phenomenon of establishing a metric, right, on subconscious memory. That metric basically just is a way of saying how close two subjects appear to the subconscious mind. If we can imagine a subject space within subconscious memory. And if two subjects appear very, very close or very similar to each other to subconscious perspective, then the subconscious would recall or access the memory of the major subject when focusing on the minor subject, or the subject that looks similar to the main subject, which carries the charge. Well, subject morphism is a little bit similar to that kind of phenomenon. So just to go over this point here, subject morphism is a phenomenon that occurs when the perception of the conscious mind becomes altered in a way that makes it hard for the subconscious to recognize it. So what I mean by that is that it's possible, basically with your subconscious, when it charges, as we've been saying, right, it alters your perception. Well, it's actually also possible for the subconscious to charge and alter, it's possible for it to charge and alter your perception in a way where the subject, which carries the main charge, or carries some charge, or really it's just associated with some subconscious memory, it's possible for it to alter your perception in a way where the subject doesn't look, basically it doesn't look like the subconscious has associated with subconscious memory, or it doesn't look the way the subconscious remembers the subject looking, right? And when that actually happens, it's hard for the subconscious to actually access the subconscious memory when you focus on that subject, because it no longer looks like that subject because your perception is altered. In a good example of that, right, and the one I think I give in the book, is if you think about, let's say we focus on the Toyota Camrys, right? So we're going to talk about Toyota Camrys, if I'm saying that right, Toyota Camrys. So I had a Toyota Camry a couple of years ago, a 98 Camry, so I used to call it Old Rusty, right? Like, that reminds me of something I watched from recess when I was a kid, but this very, very old, not impressive looking car, but it got me around, right? So it got me around, so I'm still grateful for it. But it was a very old car, it was a 98 Toyota Camry. But I'm not even necessarily going into that. Let's say that let's say that I charge my subconscious to really like Toyota Camrys, right? Probably a better example is a BMW. But no, let's actually switch. The one I put in the book is Toyota, but it just makes more sense to say a better car. So let's say I talk about a BMW, like kind of like a hot rod sports type of car. And Toyota Camrys are fine. I don't need a BMW, but just for the sake of example, let's say that I want to get like an i8 BMW, or I like BMWs, right? And now my subconscious is charged to react to them very strongly, or it's very volatile to the idea of the idea of a BMW has a category, right? Let's say the category I really like are i8 BMWs. And so every time I see an i8 BMW, I get really excited, right? I'm like, oh, I really like that type of car. Now, let's say my car, I also have let's say an i8 BMW, but let's say that my i8 BMW is very old, it's very ugly, it's very rusty, something happened, I crashed it, all the doors are sort of caved in a little bit from the crash, and it just doesn't look very nice or flattering, right? So I don't have that reaction when I see my i8 BMW. There's a lot of negative memory, and I'm not excited by it. So in other words, in my subconscious memory, I have two kinds of charges. I now have a charge for a category of i8 BMWs, and I also have a charge for my own BMW. I have a subconscious memory for both, I should say. Now, let's say that I see my own car after charging up the category, or charging subconscious memory that stored the category, right? how does my subconscious respond? Because technically my I8 BMW looks like the category in the subconscious memory that has a category carrying the charge. Does the subconscious memory carrying the category get access when I see my I8 BMW? Or does the subconscious memory that has a negative memory stored get accessed when I see my I8 BMW? So that's an interesting case, and the question is, which memory gets accessed, right? So the answer, I believe, would be whichever one your subconscious sort of recognizes more when you see when I see my BMW. So if it recognizes both equally, both subconscious memories will be accessed, and I'll feel a little bit of the negative memory and the feelings of not liking my car, and I'll feel some of the excitement at the same time. If my subconscious from subconscious perspective, if for some reason it sees my car more as a category, then I would just get more excited when I see my car, the same way I get excited when I see other cars. If my car deviates too much from the category, which probably might happen too because my car looks old and it's dented from being crashed and everything, if it doesn't look enough like the category, then I'll just access the subconscious memory that's negative. It represents my car, and I won't feel very much. So which memory gets access depends on how it looks from subconscious perspective. But the point of really going over that is that the way the car appears to my subconscious can be morphed, or the subject itself can be morphed, right? So it can look a little more like my old car, or it can look like a category. If, let's say, I fix up my car and it looks very much like the new cars, then I would get excited. Why? Because now it looks more like the category. If I just went back in time a little bit and made it look like my old car again, then my subconscious memory that carries the old charge would be accessed when I focused on it. So that basically demonstrates subject morphism. It is possible for your subconscious to, that example really was just an example of changing the thing itself, but really what I'm talking about with subject morphism is that the subconscious can be charged in a way where the subject itself doesn't necessarily appear like a subject that was stored in subconscious memory. And when that happens, it gets harder for the subconscious to access the memory when you focus on that thing due to your altered perception. We're going to talk about this principle in the next video when we talk about shock charging, because that's basically how it works. Because when your subconscious looks at something and is unable to access the memory because it looks too different, then it just kind of looks new again, and then you could charge a lot of energy. This principle I want to talk about, we talk about these principles more in chapter 13, I think, in the book, but I'll just go over a little bit now. Another manifestation of subject morphism is when you focus on one thing, then you focus on the next thing right away or immediately after. Because when you focus on one particular thing, as a result of the reflection principle, you produce a particular intention, and that'll alter your perception in a very particular way, and that altered perception can make the next thing you look at appear a certain way that it might not have appeared had you not looked at that first thing first, right? So as an example, let's say you look at a small rock or a pebble, right? That rock might not look all that small by itself. If I look at a small pebble, I might not think of it as being very small, even though it is. It's just a rock. My intention doesn't add the context or the information that causes me to see it as a small thing. But when you put that rock next to a large rock or a boulder, I might now think of that pebble as small. What I really meant to say is if you look at a pebble and then you look at a boulder, that boulder will probably look very large in the context of being next to a pebble or observing it after having looked at a pebble first, right? By the same token, if I look at a boulder and then look at a pebble, now the pebble looks small. By itself, if I didn't look at any boulder or any larger rock, I just thought of it as a rock. I didn't think of the pebble as small. When I look at a boulder or a really large rock and then look at the pebble, now I think of it as small. So what that tells you is that that the context, which is pretty much what I said before, I believe in chapter 7, the context of one thing you perceive, right, it actually borrows information from the previous context, and it adds information to the next context. And what ends up happening is you're able to create something that I call a context current, which I'll go over in a moment. But basically, when you look at one thing, a lot of times that can actually affect how you perceive the next thing immediately after. And if you kind of keep doing that over and over and over, you can actually enhance how your subconscious responds to a series of things that you observe. You can kind of maximize your response to it. And just to go over this point, that's actually what movies and that's what's done in movies and music. So movies and music ideally operate on this principle, and they establish what I call context currents. So a context current is pretty much what I said. It's basically the idea of presenting some type of subject, could be environment, person, place, or thing, and when you observe it, you produce some intention based on a reflection principle, and then the next thing you sort of present and your mind focuses on, it looks a certain way based on the previous context, which, if done correctly, it has a particular context which causes your subconscious to respond very strongly. And then if you do it again, that keeps happening and you keep having very strong responses. Now this is actually going to make a little more sense when we talk about the way creativity works. I actually don't think I bring this up until the idea of creativity in the book, but I just wanted to talk about it a little early right now. But that basically is the principle on how creativity works, delivery, everything. It works based on the context of a context current. When you charge your subconscious for the purpose of creativity, you actually naturally establish a context current in your delivery without realizing it. This is very negative-minded or conscious-minded. This is a very conscious-minded way of putting it. To the subconscious, is just organizational patterns, which we're going to talk about. But yeah, so that's it. That's basically the concept of subject morphism. Again, it's basically the principle that your subconscious can become altered in such a way. Your subconscious can alter your perception in such a way that a subject looks different from the subconscious memory that it was normally associated with. In the next video, we're going to talk about, like I said, shock charging, which is based on this principle. Right? So that's it for now, but thanks for watching, and I'll see you next video.